On our planet, around 117 billion people have been born throughout history, and 93% of them are already dead. Most of them have been completely forgotten by history. We don't know who they were, where they lived, or what they did with the time they were given. But this isn't true for every human being. In 2022, researchers were given a very difficult task: create a detailed list of notable humans in history. As a result, they identified around 2.29 million famous and influential people from recorded history. These included world leaders, influential scientists, explorers, revolutionary inventors, and, interestingly, a few complete idiots too, including the man this video is about. Try not to laugh too much during this video, because it's going to get really funny. In the winter of 1748, Timothy Dexter was born in a town called Malden, right next to Boston, Massachusetts. His family was extremely poor. Money was never a problem in their house because they simply never had any. Even though Timothy wasn't very smart, he always believed that one day he would become rich. When he was only 8 years old, he decided he needed to make big moves early in life. His first big move? Dropping out in second grade. After that, he worked on farms and later got a job at a leather factory. He worked there for years and earned more money than his family had ever seen before. But he knew this job would never make him truly rich. So at age 19, Timothy decided it was time for another big move. He sold his best suit and used the money to move to another town called Newburyport. He believed the town's growing economy would help him make extra money. And surprisingly, he was right. But he didn't become successful through a high-paying job. Instead, he met a very wealthy widow named Elizabeth Frothingham and married her. Overnight, Timothy became rich. After moving into his wife's mansion, he started telling people to call him Lord Timothy Dexter. Yes, he literally added Lord to his own name. But now that he suddenly had money, he didn't know what to do with it. He spent his days wandering around Newburyport watching what rich people did. He noticed that most wealthy people held political positions, so Timothy decided he wanted to become a politician too. He ran in an election and lost badly. But instead of accepting defeat, Timothy constantly sent petitions to the town demanding that they give him some kind of political office. The problem was, Timothy was incredibly uneducated. His letters were full of spelling mistakes, strange riddles, and confusing sentences. Experts literally had to be called in just to understand what he was trying to say. Eventually, the town got so annoyed that they decided to give him a fake political title just to make him stop writing petitions. They made him Informer of the Deer. The joke was, there were no deer anywhere in Newburyport, but Timothy didn't realize it was a joke. He took the role completely seriously. He walked around town all day documenting deer activity, even though there were no deer at all. When his term ended, Timothy proudly handed over a giant logbook filled with strange drawings and unreadable paragraphs about deer. The town officials couldn't understand any of it, so they threw the whole thing away and never gave that position to anyone again. Then came the American Revolutionary War. During the war, America printed a currency called the Continental dollar to pay troops. But these dollars weren't backed by gold or silver, only by the promise that they might become valuable if America won the war. The government printed way too much money, causing massive inflation. By 1778, the currency had lost most of its value. Soon it became nearly worthless. Rich people in Newburyport started buying these worthless dollars from soldiers for cheap, pretending they were helping them. Timothy saw this and thought it was a genius investment opportunity. He believed America would eventually win the war and the currency would regain value. So Timothy spent all his savings buying Continental dollars, not just a few. He bought almost every Continental dollar he could find, nearly 20% of all the currency ever printed. Everyone thought he was insane. But then America won the war, and Congress honored its promise by restoring the currency's value. Overnight, Timothy Dexter became one of the richest men in America. With his new fortune, he bought a massive mansion in Newburyport's richest neighborhood. Then, he filled his lawn with 40 wooden statues of famous people like George Washington, Napoleon Bonaparte, Thomas Jefferson, and himself. Under his own statue, he wrote, "I am first in the East, first in the West, and the greatest philosopher in the Western world." At this point, rich people in town became jealous and wanted to ruin him. Knowing Timothy wasn't very smart, They started giving him terrible investment advice as a prank. First, they told him to buy thousands of warming pans and ship them to the Caribbean. Warming pans were used in cold places to heat beds, completely useless in the hot Caribbean climate. Timothy bought 40,000 of them and shipped them overseas. But when they arrived, locals discovered they worked perfectly as tools for stirring hot molasses in sugar factories. He made a huge profit. The rich people were furious. So next, they told him to ship coal to Newcastle, a city already famous for having endless coal. Normally, this would have destroyed him. But right before his shipment arrived, coal miners in Newcastle went on strike, creating a coal shortage. Once again, Timothy sold everything for massive profit. Now completely frustrated, the aristocrats gave him another horrible idea: buy whale bones. Whale bones were becoming outdated and losing value rapidly. Timothy bought huge piles of rotting whale bones and stored them in his basement. Soon after, whalebone corsets suddenly became fashionable in France. Again, Timothy got rich. At this point, Timothy believed he was a financial genius. He started making investments completely on his own. One day, he bought all the stray cats in Newburyport and shipped them to the Caribbean, believing people there would want them as pets. Instead, the cats became valuable because the Caribbean had a huge rat problem in warehouses. Again, perfect timing. As he grew older, Timothy became obsessed with his legacy. At one point, he even staged his own funeral just to see how people would react after his death. During the fake funeral, he noticed his wife Elizabeth didn't seem sad enough. So Timothy suddenly jumped out of hiding in front of thousands of people and started beating her with a cane. Later, he announced that his wife was actually dead, even though she was still alive and walking around the mansion. Whenever visitors saw her, Timothy claimed she was her own ghost. By this point, he was so rich and influential that people just accepted it. Before dying, Timothy wrote an autobiography called A Pickle for the Knowing Ones. The book was only 24 pages long and contained terrible spelling, random sentences, and almost zero punctuation. It became an instant bestseller because people thought it was hilarious. When critics complained about the lack of punctuation, Timothy printed a second edition with one extra page containing random punctuation marks. At the bottom of the page, he wrote, "Now let them use them as they please." In 1806, Lord Timothy Dexter, the informer of the deer, quietly died for real this time.